Hey guys, welcome to another live She Knows Arsenal daily download. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Let me know right away if this is too glitchy because I'm trying my camera one more time. And if it's too glitchy or, my mouth is not moving with the words, let me know and I'll just switch to my other camera really quick. That's just like the web camera. But if it's okay, just let me know so we don't start off the show like in a bad way. But make sure you guys are liking the video, subscribing to the channel, get into the chat. Let me know how you guys are thinking and feeling ahead of after the Germany-Hungary game and before Scotland. Who is Scotland playing? Whoever Germany played first. No, whoever Denmark played first. Who was it? Serbia? Maybe? I forget. Because there's been so many games. Let's look. Scotland. Let's see. Because they really need a win. Switzerland. Okay, so Xhaka and them. Okay, so we're just going to squeeze this show. We're going to squeeze this show kind of in between that game. But let me go ahead and switch because people are saying it's slightly off. And so I don't want to go on with this if it's just like too hard to watch or you guys are like, okay, this is like not. Oh, let's do this instead. Good? Good to go? Let me do this too. I didn't know that was gonna happen. I dropped my phone. Okay. So this should be a little bit better. We should be good to go now. It's not as bright and it's not as great, but we will survive. I'll just move my light over this way just to make sure there's a little bit more light. Okay. So we are going to be talking a lot about Pedro Neto. I think after, his display, it was, off the bench for Portugal yesterday, that there were a lot of Arsenal fans in general, that were giving him his flowers, which he definitely deserved. But there were a lot of Arsenal fans that were like, we need to revisit this. We need to look at him again. We need to, make this happen. And I was like, okay, let's talk about this once again, because it's not just like Arsenal fans that are saying this. It's, there are rumors that Arsenal will go back in for Pedro Neto, or they'll try to get the signing done this time around. I think the problem has always been the fee and then the injuries, and Arsenal wanting to see if he could put together a top quality, season without these injuries. And he was able to do really well for Wolves this past season, but he still had those injuries, and it's like the same ones. It's like muscle injuries. And so that's pretty much my major concern with him, is that I'm not sure that I believe that just because he's not going to play for Arsenal, or he's going to be a rotational option, that he's, his injuries don't matter. I think they do, especially when when we start talking about the fee and things like that. But this is coming from Give Me Sport, from Dean Jones. Dean Jones said that Arsenal could choose to revive their interest in Pedro Neto. The belief among Wolves insiders is that a deal could be struck in the coming weeks, with Neto pinpointed as their expected big money departure for the summer, which is interesting because I just read that Lopetegui wants to bring, what is his name? They want to bring one of the defenders from Wolves over as well. Let me see what his name is. You guys will probably say in the chat before I can get to it, but they want 50 million for him. And I'm like, okay, well, then if you sell him, you don't really need to sell Pedro Neto, but that's neither here nor there. But they expect him to be sold. They expect teams to come in for him. They'll probably be looking for replacements, or they may have already looked at and brought in. I know that Wolves have already made a signing or so. So there's, a lot going on with Wolves, and the players that they want to bring in, the players that they expect to go out, and Pedro Neto being one of them. Pedro Neto is a really, really good player. Like, I've never denied that I thought that if he was going to leave, that his perfect landing space would be Arsenal. I just don't see any other teams being as good of a place for him to go, because one, I think he's an Arsenal fan. Two, he would be coming to a place with stability and a good manager and a very clear role in the team. And I think that that's important. He could go to Manchester United and start for them, but again, like, Manchester United is very up and down, and Arsenal is just his role would be very clear. You are rotating with Saka and Martinelli in those wide areas. He can cover both. Okay, it was Max Kilman. Max Kilman was the other the defender that they were talking about going to West Ham, but his role would be super clear. He would fit in so seamlessly with what we're trying to do, and what he did yesterday against, I think it was the Czech Republic, was just so, I think, what a lot of Arsenal fans are really looking for a winger: direct, pacey, and can make things happen. And one thing that Clive from the Arsenal Vision podcast was saying about Pedro Neto is that he has a lot of personality, and we've been talking about needing more personality, needing more sparkle dust, needing players that are willing to, like, make things happen in this team. And so, yeah, from my perspective, I'm like, he makes a lot of sense in terms of the type of player that he is, and what he could bring to the table, and his role being very clear. He's like 23, 24 years old. So he's right in that same, like, kind of age range as Saka and Martinelli. And if you could bring, Trossard and Pedro Neto off the bench, I mean, that's really, really good. It's really just the injuries and the fee. The fee would have to come down significantly. Like, Wolves a couple of years ago, when we first tried to get him, wanted 60 million. And that seemed like a lot for a player that, like, just to be, like, super real, he really, like, doesn't have that much end product that we can talk about. Like, and some of that is probably just, maybe injuries if he had played a full season. But again, you don't really know that, because whenever I check his stats, I'm like, as exciting of a player as he is, this is his best season, and it's 2 goals and 9 assists. The season prior was a wash. In 2021, 2022, he had 1 goal and 1 assist. And then before that, it was like 5 goals, 6 assists. So it's not like there's consistent end product there, especially when they were asking for the 60 million. Now, even if they ask for the 60 million, you can always look at how many games he played, and he only played 20. He only played 20, and Arsenal have 38 games like everyone else, but 38 games plus all the other competitions. So yeah, it's an interesting one. If they were willing to come down to like 30 million, I feel like that would be a really good fee for him. But I just have, like, this weird feeling that, like, they're still going to want, like, a lot, because it's a Premier League team. And that's where I feel like Arsenal should probably look in another direction, because it's guaranteed that he's going to get injured. Like, this is Arsenal. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? So he's definitely going to get injured. Like, we know that. Let's see. Samuel says, Neto is not the guy we want. He won't be available when we want him to be available. Availability matters for me. Yo-Yo says, if you lambast the likes of Partey and Jesus and Tommy, then you can't be in support of signing the likes of Neto, Isak, and Osimhen. And seriously, like, that is kind of my point. I think I've been very consistent on the injuries, and I don't think it really matters who it is in the team. I know some people, it's like, it depends on who it is. Like, if it's, Partey, it doesn't matter. But if it's Jesus, who people are a little bit more cold on, or Tomiyasu, then it's like a big deal. When I just think, like, honestly, you can't have so many players in your team that you just can't keep fit. And so bringing him in, knowing what his injury record is, you didn't really know what it was going to be like for Partey. You kind of knew with Jesus, but it wasn't as bad. Maybe it's just one big injury that has kept him out really mostly for Arsenal. And then, for Tommy, there were already signs there at Bologna. So we really have to be careful with something like this, because let's just say that like Saka got injured and then we're like, okay, we're going to use Neto, and then he gets injured. Just from there, it's just going to look so bad, isn't it? So yeah, I think that's kind of where I sit, with the injuries. And like, obviously not every single injury is, a big, is a big deal. Sometimes it's like contact, and contact is more, unfortunate than anything else. But, these are like consistent muscle injuries, and we know how those goes. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I'm going to read some of your guys' comments out in just a moment here. Let's see. I'm just looking for the comments that actually have something to do with what we're talking about, because some of you guys are talking about my personal life, and I think that's so fucking weird. I'm not even gonna lie to you guys. I think it's so weird that some of you guys talk about my private life. Like, do you not have something to do? But yeah, I'm just trying to get my scene to come back up in just a second. Anyways, we're gonna go ahead and do some of these comments. Abu says Neto all day long. Abu says Neto all day long. Boy says, damn, kindergarten vibes. It really is kindergarten vibes in here sometimes. Like, seriously, you guys, why do you care about my personal life so much? Like, get a life. Saida says, no one is denying Neto's talent, but we can't ignore his injury record. I've had enough of having talented players that aren't reliable. Take Partey as an example. Monk said, I take him for 20 with add-ons at the most. Kind of agree with that. People are always calling me. Let's see. Foxy says, yeah, Ahmed needs a timeout at this point. It's concerning. I haven't seen Ahmed in like a long time, but like, you only come in here and talk about my personal life. It's just very strange. But yeah, I really do agree with Saida with that. It's like, aren't you tired? Ultimate Gunner says, I don't think we need Neto. Jesus can also play backup right wing, Martinelli and Trossard at left wing. What we need is a quality 20 plus goal scoring striker. The problem with that, Ultimate Gunner, is that although I kind of agree with what you're saying, there's not many 20 goal per season strikers out there on the market. There's concerns about every single player that we've been linked to in that position. You can say just throw the bag at Isak, but the most recent thing that I read is that he's going to sign a new contract for Newcastle. And unfortunately, there are players that are just not on the market. Like, I get that we have this idea that everybody has a price, but like, if Manchester City came to us to try to get Saka, what will we say? He's not for sale. So you can't get Isak, who's probably the most proven 20 goal per season striker that we would want. I think Osimhen has only had one season where he scored 20 plus goals, and that was when Napoli won the league. This past season, he didn't do it. In seasons before that one, he didn't do it. So is he really that? You have Gyökeres, who's doing it in another league, but people don't rate that league. So like, is it going to translate? So as much as we may feel like we need this 20 goal per season striker, which I kind of agree with that, if you can't get that, you cannot just not address it. You have to address something. We need another winger and we need a striker. If you can't get the striker, you have to get the winger. So Pedro Neto is a good option, probably at a certain price. Jesus, to me, is not somebody that I feel like is going to do very good on the wing for Arsenal, and I'll tell you why. I just personally feel like Jesus came to Arsenal wanting to be the number 9, being shifted off to the wing by Pep Guardiola, and wanted to prove that he's actually a striker that can score goals. And it hasn't really happened for him at Arsenal. If he gets shifted out to the wing again at a club that's not even Manchester City, no shade to us, but like, we're not winning trophies like they were. He left a team that was winning trophies to go be number 9 at Arsenal just to be shifted out to the wing by Arsenal. Like, I feel like it, for somebody that like I followed for a long period of time, as talented as Gabriel Jesus is, he is always in his head. I think it's his biggest problem when it comes to scoring goals, is that he overthinks everything. And so once he gets on the wing and he's been shifted out to the wing again, how is he going to perform as Saka's backup? Number 9 to Saka's backup in a year, like I don't feel like you can rely upon him. And to be honest, to come off of the bench, like we accepted him as a number 9 that didn't score a lot of goals. Having a player coming off of the bench that doesn't offer goals to me is like a non thing. Like you just can't have it. The reason why Trossard is so valuable to us is because he has consistent end product. So you need to have somebody else on the bench besides just Trossard that can replicate what Martinelli and Saka does, but they have to offer goals. Because most likely what's happening, like when we need goals, what's happening? Or when we use our substitutes, what are we usually looking for? For somebody to come out there and change the game. And changing the game is not really what Jesus is going to do. Like he can, but like realistically, we need somebody that can offer goals too. So as much as I like Gabriel Jesus, I'm just not really buying into this idea that he's going to be a great option off of the wing for us to really rely upon, like first guy off the bench. We need to address this position. Like next season, if we didn't get a striker and our kind of like striker winger outlay was, Martinelli and Trossard on the left, Havertz and Jesus through the middle, and Saka and Neto, at least you knew that if you sub Trossard and Neto off the bench, that you're adding goals to the group. Jesus is pretty much a guaranteed no goals. So that's why I don't actually think that we can rely upon Jesus as a winger option that we absolutely like is first guy off the bench. That's kind of where I'm at. So let's see. I'm going to look at some more of these comments. Hopefully they're like normal now and not like annoying. Okay. Let's see. We're actually, I don't know where the mods are, but I'm just going to go ahead and like remove your message here. And I'm also going to put you on a timeout so you can like go do something else like while we're doing this. Like you can go like do something else. So yeah, Terrence Tibb says, apologize for your creepiness. Oh yeah, you guys are talking about that. Boy says, let me guess, you ran from your country of origin. Okay, you guys are talking about like totally like other things. Like, don't scare the hoes, y'all. Like, let's get this comment section back on point. Let's see. Blaze says, since Argentina Brazil game, in the comments he made, Gabriel Jesus wasn't the same player he was before. He had an injury last season, but this game it did. I totally agree with what you're saying. I said the same thing, that I just felt like that whole situation was like very damaging, not just for him, but for multiple Brazilian players, and him being like the face of it and then saying like, I don't score goals. Like, when obviously that's not exactly what he meant, but if you're a striker and you start like accepting that you don't score goals, you're cooked. Like, that's just, you cannot, like, you really need to like stand by your ability to score goals. And, Lacazette kind of went through a very similar thing where he kind of decided that he wasn't a goal scorer. And I was like, he's done. I was like, he is so cooked. It's just done, And from there, it's like he went on like a year-long goal drought or something like that. So it was just like the worst thing ever. Okay, so let's look and see what's going on here with Mr. Neto. So 24 years old now. We know he can play on both sides. So right winger, it doesn't really matter. Right winger, left winger, it doesn't really matter. He can play on both sides. But this is kind of like what his injury vibes are looking like. I know you guys can see that. And let's see. Hold on real quick. Just making sure you guys can see this. Yeah, I think you guys can. Just let me know if you guys can see this or not. It's like hard for me to. Let me just make sure. And okay, yeah, I can see you guys can see it. Okay, so the hamstring injury so he had 2 in 2023, 2024. 58 days, 67 days, 9 games, and 10 games missed. Bruh, that's half the season. It genuinely is like half the season. Like, damn, like, and it wasn't even like we got to October that we had been playing football for about like a month and a half, or like, let's give it like 2 months. And it was like, boom, done, and then he came back in December. Mind you, there was a break in December, I believe, or January. And then on March 10th, he was out until basically the last day of the season. Like, I don't know, you guys. That just looks like somebody that's just like, yeah. And then he had, the knee injury that he suffered in 2021, which kept him out like from, the end of that season through almost like the entire next season. And then he had the ankle injury like in 2022, 2023 that kept him out for 27 games. Like, every time I see this, it makes me less interested in him, like much less interested in him. Like, it makes me feel some type of way. It genuinely does. So yeah, can we afford this? Like, can we genuinely afford this? Like, I don't know if we can, guys. I really don't. Like, let's do this now. Let's do this. Let's do this. All right, let's do this. Okay, so he's just so, I hate this for us. I really do. I hate this for us because if he was not injury prone, he would be so perfect. Like, it's insane how good he would be for us. Left footed, so we know he can play on that right side that Saka plays. Like, he can do that, but he can also play on the other side. He's the perfect age. He's Premier League proven. He's all of that, Oh man, I hate this for us. I really do. Let me click on this. I hate this for us so much. I mean, the carries, the take-ons are good. Loads of assists, like the defensive stuff, like Arteta will fix that. Like, we know that. But I would not be surprised. The last time I looked at this, he was really close to Saka, and it may have changed now. Oh, I don't know why that went to Kosovo. The fuck? Okay. Last time they're really trying to show me this ad. Child, I don't want to see this. I don't know, whatever. So for attacking like mids and wingers, he's most closely, like, he compares very closely to like Nico Williams. So I can see why Arsenal, probably the data, people say that as well. The data probably says that too, that he's really close to Nico Williams. I could see that. And we're also linked to this person very often, this Eden Zagrova. I don't know who that is. I've seen him play like maybe once, but like, yeah, but I would not be surprised if Arsenal's data is showing these two and they're like, okay, well, who's most similar to him? Because we can't afford him or he's too injury prone. And then a year ago, actually, this was saying that he was most closely comparable to Saka and Martinelli, but that's changed. And then against midfielders, which he's not really, but it's just interesting to look at, that it's just really like those progressive carries and take-ons is kind of what we're looking for. I would say like both Saka and Martinelli are good at taking on their defender, but maybe not like the best all the time. Like, they don't have too many tricks in there. Like, what they do is very hard to stop, but there are still like times where they are stopped. So they need to figure out other ways. I feel like Neto has multiple ways to get around his defender. And so that would be really useful in games where we need to break down deep blocks and, keep the width and things like that. So yeah, I like the player, but I hate the injury record. I really do. Let's see what you guys are saying. Clement says, yes, Neto is one of the best wingers in the Premier League when healthy. He is what we need so that Saka can rest some of these games, and he is better than Nico Williams for sure. Bring him. It's just the injury record, really. It's the main thing. Bro Pro says Eden Zagovra has that Hazard style dribbling, but not pacey. I just feel like if we're only going to get one attacker, which it looks like we might only get one attacker, that one attacker kind of needs to have some pace. Do you guys agree with that? I kind of feel like one means that we need to make sure the one that we get is going to need to have a little bit of pace. Because to not address the pace feels like a little bit of we can't go into next season with Martinelli being our only transitional threat. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So yeah. Let's see. Victor says, if we're getting Neto as a backup, we don't need him for all those games. Imagine if Saka is playing poor and then we bring him on. I think he could work maybe a deal of Nelson plus 30 million. And I kind of agree with what you're saying. I think my only caveat to that would be the most Arsenal thing that could happen is that we do get a major injury to one of our forwards and then we do need him and then he gets injured. Basically Tommy and Saliba. It's we have Tommy there, but as soon as Saliba got injured, then Tommy got injured literally in the same game. And that's kind of the worst case scenario is kind of Arsenal's thing. If the worst thing could happen, it's going to happen. Your best player, one of your best players getting injured in a dead rubber in the World Cup. That happened to us. Saliba getting injured and Tommy getting injured in the exact same game. That's my only thing is as an Arsenal fan, as much as I don't want to think worst case scenario, I kind of do. And I'm okay, Saka is going to play all these games in the Euros. There's going to be a day where he just can't do it. And the last thing you want is we have Pedro Neto. And then the first time that he sprints after something, he's clutching onto his quad. That would just be, or clutching on his hamstring. So I do think you have to think, okay, well, what if we get that major injury? Then will we like our options? I don't know, so, but yeah, Saka has really good fitness, so it may never happen, but, I just think worst case scenario sometimes, if that makes sense. Make sure you guys are liking the video, subscribing to the channel. At the end of the show, in just about 10 minutes or so, I'm going to go, we actually did get a video message yesterday. So I am excited to get into that. Like I told you guys, video messages are now going to be the end of the show, every single show. So basically, if you send one in, we're going to spend the last 10 minutes or so discussing whatever you have, your question, comment, concern, whatever it is, as long as it's normal and you're not talking about my personal life because you're a weirdo, it's going to get played. And so we got a video message yesterday. So we're going to spend the last 10 minutes or so talking about that. But you guys can also send in your video messages. I have the link pinned in the chat, and you can also send, you see the QR code. You can actually, let me see if I can, this QR code right here. All you have to do is use your phone, do the QR code, and then boom, you can send one in. It's $2.99. But if you send in, super chats regularly, this might be a better use of your $2 or whatever, because you actually get to get on stage and show your face and all that kind of stuff. It's more personal, you know what I mean? We're also going to talk about Yusuf Fofana, but don't forget as well that we have a live watch along for England versus Denmark for tomorrow. So you guys can click the link in the description. I also have dropped it in the chat a couple of times for you guys to do that. The code is Jessica in order to RSVP, like it always is. And we will start about 15 minutes before kickoff. So make sure you guys are there for that. Let's see. I see some, I see some people. Errol says, Jess Mudryk could be up for sale. Breaking news. Is that breaking news? Is that breaking news? Listen, I know like he looks so dead. He really does. But I'm a firm believer in players. It's all about where you end up, and making the wrong decisions can set your career in a certain pathway. I think if he had come to us, um, I think if he had come to us, then he would have been different because he would have been in a better environment, but he didn't. So it is what it is. Um, let's see. But yeah, where's that news coming from, Errol, so I can look at it? Um, and I know that if Arsenal wanted him, that's the thing, is like, if Arsenal wanted him they like, he would be an Arsenal player if Manchester, or not, sorry, Chelsea had not outbid us. That's the funny thing, is that a lot of Arsenal fans have convinced themselves that we never wanted Mudryk, which is like the funniest thing. They're like, we never really wanted him. That's why we didn't get him. I'm like, you guys, we did want him. We got outbid. And so they must have, I'm hearing about 180-page dossiers on players. They must have thought he had something. Like, he's 23 already. That's crazy. He's so raw. Seriously. Mudryk, I'm just looking at some of his stats. He really has like that pace and directness, but like, my goodness, he's so raw. He really needs coaching bad, and he's not going to get it at Chelsea. But that's just unfortunate. Let's see. Oh, Al Nasser is interested in signing Bruno Fernandes and Lucas Paqueta. They're not going to get either one of those. That's for sure. Not until they're like 30 or 40. But yeah, I think that, Neto is a good option for us, but Arsenal would need to get the price down. If they can't, go for Bakayoko, maybe, Nico Williams, but they have to address it. Like, there's just no way. There's just no way you can go through the season and not do it. Let's see. Ricky says, just hopped on. Who are we talking about? We just kind of finished talking about Pedro Neto, and is it worth bringing him in despite his injury record? I'm seeing on the poll that 57% of you guys say yes, he's worth the risk, and 43% of you guys say no. So there's kind of people on both sides of thinking. So I'm not sure what you think, Ricky, but listen, when you watch him, because he's actually on the pitch, he makes all the sense of the world. But once he gets injured again, it's like, oh, yeah, I remember why we haven't gone for you. Saida says, I'm so tired of Arsenal signing all these players that need rescuing. By the time he gets up to speed with the team, we would have dropped points that we need to accumulate to stay ahead of City. Saida, it's almost like you're speaking from experience there. Speaking from experience there. Yo-Yo says, could give Wolves Fabio and some cash for Neto. I think it's not really Fabio that would end up going. I think a good option actually would be Emile Smith-Rowe, because they've been interested in him in the past. I don't know if, like, Fabio is not going to go to another Premier League team. I think when he leaves here, he's going to go back to Europe, or like another team like in like France or Portugal, or, I just don't see, him doing the Premier League thing, if that makes sense. And Samuel says, Mudryk is a lost cause. We don't need him. Now, I do want to talk about Fofana, because once again, we're being linked to Fofana again and again and again and again. And I'm just like, listen, if we're going to go for this guy, like, just go for him for reals, I really like Fofana. I always have. I think he's, if we're not going to do big signings, if that makes sense, it'd be really nice to go for smart signings. And this would be a really smart one at like 15 million. I think I saw a link, and it said, Yusuf Fofana would be like 15 million. Arsenal would have, competition with AC Milan and another club. But, Arsenal have tried to look at him recently, and have done some scouting and like talked to his agents and stuff like that. And I'm just like, listen, like if you're gonna go for somebody like this, just do it. Like sometimes smart signings end up being some of the better ones, so I'm not that opposed to it. I just am like, if you're gonna do it, just get it done. Like just get it done as soon as possible so we don't lose out on him to somebody else. 15 million is an absolute steal for somebody that can play multiple positions. That's, really just solid. Like he's so solid. Like he's a French international. He's still young. Like what's the problem? Like I see no problems in bringing in somebody like Fofana. Yeah. So he would definitely be somebody that I'd be like, Arsenal, just go ahead and get it done. Sometimes it takes a minute for the thing to go off. So that's what I was waiting on. Sorry. But yeah, I would really like to see Fofana at Arsenal. And if Arsenal are going to do it, get it done. Let's see. Let's look up some of his statistics, see what he's good at, what he's not good at. But you guys let me know in the comments what you think about Fofana for 15 million. Arsenal would have some what is it called? Some competition from other teams, but like, why would he want to come to us? We're the Arsenal, right? And, he can play with Declan Rice instead of Declan Rice. He's athletic. He looks the business. His birthday is January 10th, which is the same day as mine. So of course that makes the most sense. You know who else has a January 10th birthday? Mason Mount. Not like you guys give a shit, but, January 10th, Capricorn, let's go. 25 years old. He has a lot going for him. And cheap. So Arsenal don't have an excuse not to get it done because, he doesn't cost that much. Let's see what you guys are saying while I figure out what's going on with this graphic. Boy says, I saw Boy's comment come through. Are you guys talking to each other? Troy says, I really don't know why. Okay. I don't want to see that at the bottom, man. Me to look at these ads, man. It's pissing me off. Give me one sec. Scrub is a guy that thinks he's fly. All right, I think I got it. Okay. I saw the comment. Okay. Troy says, I really don't know why Arsenal are not jumping at this. Fofana is a tank. You go get him now. I feel like it's just because it's too obvious. I feel like getting Fofana is too obvious. Like complicating things would be like getting Onana, somebody that doesn't have as much to his game, but is more expensive and is at a Premier League team. This is the smart deal. If you want to get that profile, get somebody that's good, like really good, and has that well-roundedness to his game. If you want somebody with more of that physical profile, he just is the better option. 15 million, it's a fucking steal. His progressive passes are good. So for all of you guys that are like, Declan Rice never passes forward. You have somebody that passes forward for you. His carries are okay. His take-ons are good. Like I said, multiple positions, is good defensively. He's just a really solid player. And like, I do feel like it would not be a bad thing to have kind of like another player that we can use that has not versatile is not the word, but just is like a really solid player, a top quality player, maybe not like an always starter, but somebody that we feel confident coming in. In the past, like we've just had too many players on the bench for the midfield position that Arteta doesn't trust, or they don't know how to impose themselves on a game, or they don't have enough confidence to like be at Arsenal or whatever. I'm thinking about like Sambi, somebody like Sambi who started off okay, but then like really fell away, and then Arteta didn't trust him anymore, and then we could barely use him. Somebody like Fofana to like replace like a Sambi type, and then, maybe move on to Emile Smith-Rowe, Fabio Vieira, whatever. I think we're stronger, we're stronger for it. And so, somebody like this who maybe in the long run doesn't end up being like the full-on starter, because eventually we're going to have to buy an elite player to play in this position. But bringing in somebody like this kind of feels like a better version of the Kovacic transfer to Manchester City, where everybody was kind of like, is this the player that they should be going for? They went for Declan Rice. They didn't get him. Now they they got Kovacic, whatever. And he ended up being like a really good, like, just squad player for them. And like, he played a lot of minutes for them. Sometimes he started, sometimes he didn't, but he didn't look out of place. He gave them something different, and he made their squad stronger. And like, I feel Fofana kind of feels that. And that's another, like, he fits that same Fofana, Onana, they fit that same thing. But Fofana is just better than Onana. He's just better than Onana. Nuance of the Face says, Jess, you might need mods. I do have mods, but they don't be here. That's why I don't be having mods for real. Do you want to be a mod? Who wants to be a mod? Raise your hand. Who wants to be a mod? If you want to be a mod, put your hand up right now. Let me know, and I'll make you a moderator right now. Because every time I choose mods, they don't be here for real. So I don't know what to do. But Burmy says, I think Arsenal is using the stealth approach this transfer window. Samuel says, my big question on him is why a lot of clubs kept quiet on him. His sale clause is not that expensive, but why clubs are not going for him? Clubs are going for him. He actually almost ended up in the Premier League last summer. Last summer, he was really close. It's funny because him and Bakayoko both almost ended up at Nottingham Forest last summer, but like the deals had happened between the clubs, but both players said they didn't want to go there. Most likely because both of them know that they're Champions League level players. They're both full internationals. Fofana is a full international for France, and Bakayoko is a full international for Belgium, both playing in the Euros now. And so they did almost end up in the Premier League. I just think they're the types of players that, like, if you're looking for like your Declan Rice signing or whatever like that, you're not going to go for a Fofana because he's not really that guy. He's just more of like he's going to be a filler. So if we're not going to be able to get whatever big signing we're looking for, I don't know who it is that we're looking for. If you can't get him, get Fofana, because he could at least fill that role in the meantime. But he's not so limited where it's like, God, like, kind of like Jorginho in a way. Like Jorginho, when he came in, like, he did a good job and all that kind of stuff. And I still think he's doing a good job, but he's limited in some of the other things that he can do, where you're always kind of like, oh, I wish we had this. I wish we had that. I think Fofana would temper us just long enough where we can get to the next summer where we know when Jorginho's playing, it's like, we need to get somebody, if that makes sense. So there's squad guys and there's squad guys. Jorginho should be an El Neni. Fofana should kind of be in that like level just above. And those are the types of players that I think we're looking for. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like Trossard and Jorginho should be like these guys. And then like Fofana, Bakayoko, Pedro Neto should be like the next level up. And then you have your starters. Having Trossard and Jorginho as like squad guys that, are very experienced and can do the job is great, but we need like another group of squad guys that are better than that, if that makes sense. And so with the Jorginhos and the Trossards, you really do kind of like see where the gaps are, which makes sense because we spent like 12 million, 27 million on them. We know that they were backups to the real options that we wanted, like Caicedo and Mudryk. And maybe that's kind of what I'm saying, is that those are the players that we need to go find. We need to find a Caicedo and a Mudryk type. We haven't addressed it yet. We bought Jorginho and Trossard. It's fine to have them, but we need to get to that next level up. Fofana can do that Caicedo-y type of role. Pedro Neto is kind of like that Mudryk type. Find those guys. Maybe they don't always start, but it makes the squad stronger. And so that's where I'm kind of like at with the squad building. It's like we need to up level that bench a little bit more. Not to guys that are just there, but guys that could actually make a huge difference. BroPro says, what about Amadou Onana? You want to look at his stuff? We can. Now look at Fofana's. Take a picture. Take a mental picture really quick. Just like this. Mental picture. Okay. So let's look at Onana. Did you guys see the video of Onana getting mad at the journalist for calling him Andre. Not gonna lie, that was freaking hilarious. And I don't blame him. Say my real name. Like, don't play me out. Let's see. And I saw a super chat come through. I will go back to it in just a second. Let's see. So we're looking at Amadou Onana now. Now we took the mental picture, right? Where the green bars at? Hello? Is this what y'all want? This it? We got aerial duels. I mean, you should be winning all the aerial duels because, like, listen, you're like way taller than everybody else. Tackles are high, but like everything else is like, I don't know. Y'all take a mental picture of that. Y'all let me know what you think about that. So that's your boy. That's your boy. Diallo says, part of Fabio Vieira Hive. So am I. So am I. Diallo says, guys, we ain't signing a backup for 70 million, no chance. Basically, I think you're talking about Pedro Neto. Thank you so much for your super chat. I do agree with you on that one. If I really do. I think it's not going to be 70 million, and that's why the fee would have to come down significantly, I think, to get that done. Because otherwise, like, how are we doing that? Guys, it's my first smoothie from my new blender. And so it's so good. I know it doesn't look good. It's not beets. It's like blackberries, blueberries, raspberries, and cherries. I like berries and banana and spinach. So I'll take a second to take a drink of it because I haven't drank it at all. So yeah, let me go back down to the bottom. Let's see. Yo-Yo says, Leo, Georgie maintained the last 2 title challenges. We need players to bridge the gap. Yeah, I think they're if that's your bottom level squad player, you're doing really well. But there's still something missing right there underneath Martinelli and Saka. Players that we know can obviously take their spots. Like Jorginho and Trossard are never going to be first choice and are never really breaking down the doors to be starters. They probably have started and played more football than we expected them to play because the players that we rely upon have not really, they didn't show up last season. Like they either were injured or they weren't playing well. So I do think we're still looking for players that can really break down that door. And that's going to be that next level up from Trossard and Jorginho. I think Jorginho and Trossard being your bottom, your floor is perfect. But we still need more than that. That's kind of where I'm at with it. Brian's talking to each other. Des Moran says, Neto is not coming to Arsenal, believe me. And that's a good decision by Arteta and the scouting team. Well, hopefully you get somebody just as good, if not better, because listen, we need another winger badly. But you guys don't seem so excited about Onana. Why not? Y'all not feeling the stats here? Now, this is what I be seeing, by the way. These stats match up very well to the player that I be looking at. So yeah. Let's see. John P says, a few weeks ago, we were talking Kimmich, De Jong, Bruno level. Now we are Arsenal 2020. I mean, but the thing is if you can't get those players, you still need to buy somebody. And that's what I'm saying. It's how Kimmich is available. I just don't know if he's angling for the Barcelona move, but take him out. De Jong, he's not available. Hansi Flick is not going to let him leave. That's somebody he wants to build his midfield around. Bruno Guimaraes, not available. Newcastle said they want the whole release clause, which basically means he's not available. So who else is actually out there that's on that level? If you can't get those players, then you should get somebody that is not going to stop you from getting those potential level players next summer, but still makes you better in the meantime. And I think that's why Fofana is a good option because he's not going to stop you from doing anything. He's going to cost you 15 million. His wages are not going to be high, but he's going to be a better squad player than Emil, Fabio, Sambi, all these types. He's going to up that level significantly. And if we're playing a game, let's say just you have the favorite midfield. You have Partey, Rice, and Odegaard, and the player that you're bringing off of the bench is Fofana, that's so much better than like trying to piecemeal things together or whatever, if that makes sense. So I kind of get what you're saying, but like those players are not available. And so I don't know what else you're going to do. Yeah. So that's all I'm saying is that if you're not going to be able to get your main targets, the guys that you really, really are like desperate to have, then you still need to like address the midfield, but in a way that's not going to like damage you. And we kind of did that really well with Jorginho and Trossard, but there are clear limits to those players, which as much as I like them, they are there. So, but Fofana just reeks of like a really smart signing. It just reeks of the type of signing that after it's done and somebody else does it, we're like, ah, shit, we should have done that. You know what I mean? I'm taking Fofana. Let's see. All right. Nuances of Fate, you are now a moderator. There you go. Oh my God. Let's see. Damien says, Jess, you saw Trossard in preseason playing in the number 8 and number 10 position. That's where we need to play him. I don't even think you need to move him out of the wing. I just think you need to find ways to get him closer to goal. The only way you can do that is probably with more like an overlapping fullback or the ability to swap positions with Kai. So you could figure out ways to do that. But Arteta, just the way that he plays with his wingers, he is just so like stringent to the holding the width. And so you either need to modify, you can actually just modify the system a little bit to make it better for Trossard. Whatever would make it better for Trossard is also going to make it better for Martinelli. Both of those players in different ways need to be more central. Like Trossard and Martinelli both want to be more central. So Arteta, through his system, needs to figure out a way to get them closer to goal. That doesn't even mean that they need to play different positions. Martinelli doesn't need to play striker, and Trossard doesn't need to play number 8 in order for them to play closer to goal or get more central. Arteta needs to be more flexible with his system, especially with his front players. Like they need to be able to get closer, switch positions. When we played that way last season, we scored lots of goals. We were very dangerous. We scored lots of goals this season in different ways, but like the fluidity wasn't as there, and it's damaged Martinelli, I think, the most. So yeah. Troy says Arsenal working behind the scenes, I heard. Listen, hopefully, but I'm sure that they are. Like, I can't imagine that they're just like not doing anything. Like every time I click that, it just like goes away. Okay. So I do want to get into our video message and chat about that for the last little bit of time that we have here. I know some of you guys are going to want to watch the Scotland game. Are you guys going to watch the Scotland game? Do you guys care? You know, I've been trying to watch every single game, and all of the games have been really good, you know, so for the most part. So, but this is one that I'm not like desperate to watch, so I can be a little late for it. But yeah, let's see. Let's do this. And remember, you guys can always send in your own video messages as well. Take a picture of the QR code or use the link in the chat, and yours can be up here the next day. Let's see. Whenever it decides to come up. Oh. See, it's so slow for me, but it's actually up for you guys a lot quicker. Okay. Before we play this, let me get my shit together. All right. All right. There we go. So you guys can see that on the screen. There's a video. So this could be you if you wanted to send in your video message. So we're going to go ahead and play it now.
Okay. So my first question is, why do you hate Tomiyasu?
Decides to play.
And because I know you're going to ignore that question, follow-up question. I know you don't like
Is it playing for you guys?
specialist
It's
in
not
your
playing for me.
team, but if you had to choose a specialist to put in our team right now, to put in starting 11 of Arsenal, where would you put them and who would it be?
You guys hear it? Let me know if you guys can
Okay.
hear it or not.
So my first question is, why do you hate
'Cause,
Tomiyasu?
of course, I could hear it earlier.
And because I know you're going
now
to
I
ignore
cannot
that
hear it.
question, follow-up question. I know you don't like specialists in your team, but if you had to
Yeah, you
choose
guys
a
can hear it?
specialist
Okay, so
to
you
put in
guys
our
can hear
team
it.
right
Cool.
now, to put in starting 11 of Arsenal, where would you put them and who would it be? I know you don't like specialists in your team, but if you had to
Yeah, you guys
choose a
can hear it? Okay,
specialist
so
to
you
put
guys
in our
can hear
team
it.
right now, to put in starting 11 of Arsenal, where would you put them and who would it be?
Okay.
I know you don't like specialists in your team, but if you had to choose a specialist to put in our team.
Okay. So you guys heard the question. Basically, Gabby asked me, well, she first said, why do I hate Tommy? I do not hate Tomiyasu. I don't know why she thinks I hate Tommy. I'm not playing with Tommy. Tommy needs to be fit. So Tommy needs to be fit. So I don't hate him. Like, I really, really don't hate him. But in terms of like specialists, versus like players that can do multiple things, for me, like personally, like I do think you need a couple of specialists in your team. But my whole thing about being a specialist is like there's a difference between being a specialist and being somebody that can only do one thing, but is not so good at that. If you're a specialist, that means you're like really good at what you do. Not somebody that can only do one thing, but is kind of like just okay at it. And so I guess my example of that would be like, who's like a good example of like somebody that's good at one thing but will like never be a starter. So let's say probably like the difference between, like, let's take Fabio Vieira for an example. He's probably, it would be considered a specialist, somebody that's really good at passing, finding the final ball. And so he'd be a nice player to play in your number 10. But because we're not really seeing that, he doesn't really get that spot over somebody like Declan, who Declan is somebody that like can do a lot of different things. His final ball is not the best, but he's more of somebody that has that versatility in his game. So he has more tools to use. And so you'd probably want him over Fabio Vieira, who's probably a specialist in terms of creating chances and getting assists in that left 8. Now, if you had a specialist that was elite in what they were doing, let's say you had, let's give an example of like somebody that people really want. Let's say you had a specialist of like, let's say Frankie de Jong, who's like a specialist in terms of like carrying the ball, and he's like a specialist left center mid that is so good at their job that there's just no way you'd play Declan there over him. And that's my thing. It's like, if you don't have that elite talent of somebody that's so good at that one thing that they do really well, then it is better to have somebody that can do a lot of things instead of somebody that can only is limited, I guess. And so a lot of times people will consider people that are limited as specialists. And I'm like, you're not a specialist, you're limited. You're limited. You can do one thing, one, maybe two things, but you're not really that good at it. So like, and I like a example of somebody that's people would consider a specialist if they like them, but they feel like they're limited if they don't like them, is like Pepe. Pepe, some people were saying, is like a specialist dribbler, somebody that can get past his man. He's so special at like dribbling and all this kind of stuff. But really, I just found him to be very limited because he wasn't good at passing. He really wasn't a great goal scorer. Like, he kind of just had a one trick, and if that wasn't working, he was like useless. So that's why somebody like Saka like easily took his spot. Because as much as people liked watching Pepe on the ball every once in a while and they liked his dribbling, the reality is having all of the things that Saka could do is better. And so I do like the idea of having some specialists in your team, and I think you do need them. Like good specialist to have in your team is a striker. I think your wingers, both like let's say Martinelli and Saka, neither one of them are specialists. They're so good at so many things that like it'll be really hard to displace them. I don't see very many wingers out there that could, but I do see the idea of like having a specialist striker being a position that I'd want to have a specialist in. I want a striker that's just going to strike. We've had multiple seasons of strikers that don't really strike. Number nines that false nines, want to drop deep, want to do all this kind of stuff. I think we are in the era of striker where we don't need all that other stuff. We have all the other stuff other places, get a specialist striker. So that's a position that I can see being a specialist position where Saka and Martinelli are not specialists, but they're so good at a bunch of different things that they're so good. Now, the other position that I feel like would be a good specialist position would be left center mid. Somebody that is just really good at fucking midfielding. You know, specialist passer would be really, really good in that position. Somebody that maybe they're not that great on defense. You know, maybe they do get ran beyond sometimes. Maybe they're not really a goal scorer. Maybe they're not really like, you know, they don't carry the ball, but they have, like when we're talking about picking out a pass, they have that. And because Odegaard and Rice are so well-rounded in their game, you could carry one specialist in your midfield, but you can't have a bunch of guys that can only do one or like one thing that are average. You can't have a bunch of like, you know what I mean? Just like average dudes in there. So yeah, I think that left center mid should be a specialist. I think a specialist passer in particular, somebody that could pick those passes from midfield from deep and that could do a little bit of that chefing, you know, so that when they drop in next to Declan Rice, you have that perfect combination of Declan Rice, his ability to carry the ball, somebody that can win the ball back, an athlete next to a passer that's really good at it, and you have the perfect double pivot. Then Odegaard can just do Odegaard things, and it just works for me. So those are the two positions that I feel like if we wanted to move forward, I would want them to be specialists. Is a specialist striker, I guess somebody that I would want to bring to Arsenal to play that position would probably be Sesko next summer when he's super expensive. He can do the linking up and all that kind of stuff, but really his job is to score goals. And the other person for like left center mid, I guess, like if I could bring anybody to play that position for Arsenal, I would probably look at Frankie de Jong. That's probably who I would pick. You know, he is just so good. Like in the right team, he'd be really good. I think under Hansi Flick, he's going to be amazing, but that's just me. Every other position can kind of be a little bit more, you know, well-rounded. But I want to know from your guys' perspective, like, do you guys feel like we need more specialists or do you like players that have that versatility? Because I think you can have a team they don't all have to be versatile or specialists. You need a good balance of both, you know? And right now we probably have too many jacks of all trade, master of none types in the game. We don't have enough of like, we need a special player up front and a special player in midfield that does something better than everybody else. Right now we've kind of have enough of those guys that can do a bunch of shit. Like Ben White, great. Saliba, Gabriel, great. Left back needs to be looked at. But midfield, one player that can, maybe even two midfielders, one that's more of just like a center midfielder that can pick a pass, and then a creative midfielder that's like a Musiala type. Musiala is like I think he's a really good example of a specialist. He's a specialist dribble in central areas, and he probably is not good at anything else, like not particularly really good at anything else. I don't think he's a particularly good passer. I don't think he has like great vision. You know, he's not like an amazing goal scorer, but his dribbling is so lethal that you'll find a way to put him in your team. And so having one of those players in your team works, but the other players around him need to have more well-roundedness to their game to make up for that. So when we talk about specialists, we're talking about Musiala. You know, that's a specialist. But you're still going to need your Havertzes and your Gundogan's around him, you know? And that's just how it works. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's all I'm really saying is like a mix, of that. Like I want to, yeah. And I think we have differences of opinion on who in our team is a specialist and who's not. And I think some of our players were specialists in the past when they came to us and became more jacks of all trade because Arteta has made them into that. And you depending on what kind of person you are, you may like that or you may not. Like, I think Declan Rice is somebody that has a lot of tools in a toolbox, but I think he's a specialist DM in a team that wants a DM that breaks up play and defends the back four. That's what I think he's best at. That's what I think like other managers would make him into and just make him a better version of that particular thing. But Arteta is adding more things to his game, and that's why he's playing multiple positions. Odegaard, I think, was more of like a specialist 10 at first. Like, he just created opportunities for his teammates. Now he's a deep line playmaker. He breaks up play. He's pressing. He's doing all these types of things. So he's rounded their games up a little bit more. Maybe you don't like that as much, but I think it's okay for them. But the other person next to them, I wouldn't mind them being a specialist, but I also wouldn't mind them being, more like them. Not too fussed about it as long as they're a really good player. Like, I don't want somebody that's average and is limited and somebody that is a master, like a jack of all trades, master of none. Those are the types of players I don't want in the team. Like, I don't want those players in the team. We've had that before. So yeah. Let's see. Nuance of the Fate says Tommy is limited, to put it kindly. But he's like but see, that's the thing is like, is Tommy limited or is he a specialist defender? I think he's a specialist defender. I think, yeah, he's limited in some of the things that he can do, but he's so good at defending that it's like it makes up for it. There's going to be times where you don't want him in the team. Does that make him limited though? Because a specialist you would never not want in your team, right? If they're really good at what they do. Is Tommy limited? Y'all let me know. Let's see. Boy says Saliba, Raya, those are the only specialists in the team. I don't even think, is Raya a specialist? At what? What is he a specialist at? I don't know. He's not a specialist at shot stopping. He's good at playing out from the back. I think he falls in that well-rounded category. I think he falls more in the Odegaard, Rice category than the specialist category. I don't even, is Saliba a specialist? Who is a specialist in our team? I'm really trying to think. I actually think Fabio Vieira could be a specialist because he's really good at one thing, and that's picking the pass. That is his whole game. But we don't see it enough, and it's not consistent enough to try to force him into the team. Who is a specialist in our team? I think that's a really good question. Marco says Tommy is limited, but is very good at what he's good at. He's also serviceable at what he's not good at. Very good point. Foxy says Tomiyasu is a solid squad player to have, decent age, no nonsense defender, doesn't add a lot going forward, but is perfect for certain games. So yeah. I mean, if you like a player, they're a specialist. If you don't like them, they're limited. Like, I think Onana is limited. I think he's limited. I think he's the type of player you put in your team and you're like, you want to take him right back out because he can't do a lot of different things. He can, and maybe he's not a specialist at anything. He's not specialist at breaking up play, really. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what his thing is, but if you like Amadou Onana, you'll say he's a specialist like DM or something. I don't know. So it just depends. But Marco says Saliba is a specialist. So Saliba is a specialist center back. Cool. Like, we'll put him in there. Victor says Martinelli is a specialist. Specialist at what? What is his one thing that he's better at than everyone else? Because that, to me, that's what a specialist is. Like, Toni Kroos is a specialist. He's not good at defending. He's not gonna pop around you with his dribbling. He's not carrying the ball beyond you. He's not doing anything, but he is a specialist passer, specialist, better than everybody else at that. Tempo control, passing between the lines, specialist passer. I think like if you had to call Xhaka something, he'd be a specialist at passing as well. He can do other things, but he's pretty much better than everybody else, except for maybe Toni Kroos at passing. You know what I mean? So like when you're a specialist, you're better than like everybody at that one thing. That's why I use Musiala as like an example of a specialist that you would force to your team, because he's so good at it that even his lack of passing or anything else, it's worth it because he's so good at it. I'm not forcing Martinelli into the team for nothing because I don't think he's a specialist. I think he's just so good at so many different things that, yeah, he's just Martinelli. He's just very well-rounded. Yeah, like we don't have very many specialists, you know, and if we got the next striker that we bring in has to be a specialist in scoring goals, period. Like, I think no matter what, because we have Havertz, and if Jesus stays, you have Jesus, you have Trossard. Those are all players that are very good at doing a lot of different things, but they all kind of like leave something to be desired, maybe in the goal scoring category. Maybe not Trossard so much, but Jesus and Havertz for sure. We need a specialist striker and a specialist midfielder. And depending on what you like in your midfield, that could be like an expert creator, a very good passer, a specialist dribbler, one of those things, you know? So yeah. Samuel says, if we get a midfielder who can help Odegaard to get forward players, we will win everything. Troy says, Fofana is not limited, though Deschamps has his reason why he is in the squad. Yeah, I don't think Fofana is limited. Fofana is not limited. Onana is. But that's how I feel about him. BroPro says we only have one specialist, and that's Fabio Vieira. I kind of agree with that. I think Fabio Vieira is the one player that I look at and I'm like, you are very good. You are probably better than everybody else in the team at this one thing, but the rest of your game is not all that. But if you were like if he was able to replicate what he was building at Porto for Arsenal, I do think it would be hard to get him out of our team because he has that weight of pass, the ability to see the pass, to execute it better than probably everybody else in our team. I stand on that. And I think Odegaard is probably better at different types of passes. Odegaard's passing, maybe we don't see it as much. Maybe Odegaard is up there too. I don't know. I have to think about it. Odegaard and Fabio Vieira in my mind are our best passers. So yeah. But they should be. Blaze says Scotland scored. Who scored the goal? Let me know. Marco says the one thing Martinelli gives us that other players in our team doesn't is that his constant determination. I don't think that makes him a specialist, though. I don't either. I think that's more of a character trait than a skill, if that makes sense. It's more of a character trait than anything. But yeah. Boy says, talk it into existence, Hussein. What are your thoughts on Cavadona? I think he could take us to another level. I think he's like pretty much going PSG. I don't know if we can afford 100 million on him, but good player. Probably would take us to another level because he seems to have a little bit of that special sauce on the wings, but he's just not a player that I feel like Arsenal are in line for, but but I think he's a good player. I think he's a good player. Nuances of Fate says Fabio definitely has the best killer ball. I do think it's him. Again, that's not a reason to keep him or play him above anybody because his overall game, in order to make up for his overall game not being the best, he would have to be really chefing it up. And I don't think we've seen enough of that. We've seen bits and pieces of him picking out passes and doing really good things. But in order to make up for the other stuff, he would really have to take his game to several different levels. So yeah, Fabio is probably our one specialist that I could say for sure. Saliba is a specialist. Is Gabriel not a specialist? No, I think he's a specialist defender. Gabriel has to be in there as a specialist. All he knows is defending, but is he better at it than everybody else? I mean, he damn near was last season. So Gabriel's on the line for me as a specialist. But yeah, I'm a big advocate of like a combination of the two. I know that Gabby said I hate specialists. I don't hate specialists. I don't think you can have too many of them in your team because often they have too many gaps in your game. You have to have foundational pieces in your team of guys that can do more than one thing, but you have to have a couple of specialists, and that's probably what we're looking for. Is a couple of specialists in our team to complete everything. You're just never gonna like. It's hard to find the Kevin De Bruyne who's not really like a specialist, but like just really, really good at a couple of different things at the highest level. Our best case scenario would be to get like a Musiala or a Xavi Simons or something like that. That's like our best case scenario, I feel. Sam says, do you think Arteta has destroyed Fabio? No, I think it's a combination of him not being used, him not being fit, and I think it's a combination of maybe it just not being the right signing, and sometimes that's not about the manager destroying a player. It's just like you didn't buy the right player or he wasn't right for you or whatever. So I don't want to say Arteta's destroyed him because there's been plenty of times where he probably could have been picked, but he was not even fit for the game. So that's not really on Arteta, is it? So yeah, but yeah, I think that was a really good question. I like that question, because I think we figured out that we don't have very many specialists, and maybe we want to bring a couple into the team to just make that, to just get a couple of players in the team that could do something that better than everybody else. Like Victor is saying, like a specialist striker would be like Haaland or Kane. Kane pre this DM bullshit that he's been doing. But yeah, just like we could carry a couple of specialists in the team. For sure, with the other players being so good at what they do. But yeah, guys, I really enjoyed this stream. Tomorrow we're gonna do the watch along after we do our daily download. So make sure you guys are subscribed, liking, and all that kind of stuff. If you guys want to send in your video message, you can. It's right there with the QR code, and it's also pinned in the chat. Make sure you guys sign up for the watch along for tomorrow as well. The link is in the description. I know this is a lot of housekeeping stuff, but there's a lot going on. And yeah, we'll just keep things going. But yeah, make sure you guys subscribe, like, all that kind of stuff. And I will see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.